Hello friends, welcome back to Cooking with DeeDee. I decided to bake a homemade German chocolate cake. It was my mom's favorite cake and her birthday was a couple of days ago, so I made this on her birthday as a remembrance to her. It's important that you buy the Baker's German sweet chocolate. You'll see some people just use regular chocolate. I personally don't. I get the German's chocolate. All right, first thing first, you want to get your butter and your sugar, and you want to whisk it in your blender for a good, I say 5 to 7 minutes until it's nice and fluffy. That's a critical factor to make sure that your cake is nice and moist. All right, as you can see, I used 3 sticks of butter. Some people will use 2 sticks of butter and about a half a cup of oil. I just used 3 sticks of butter. Let me clarify that. All right, the box, the traditional recipe has, I think, 1 3/4 cups of sugar. I just went on and made 2 cups of sugar. It makes it just right. As you can see, you want to whisk it where it's nice and fluffy, and you get your Baker's German chocolate bars and break it up just a little bit. And as you can see, I'm a little weak with this knife. It's not working out for me, so it's no big deal. I'm just going to use my hand and break it up a little bit more into finer pieces, not too tiny but just right so that it can go on and melt. All right, and then next I will place it into a bowl with a half a cup of water so that it can melt in the microwave on about 2 minutes. It's important that you go on and melt your chocolate in the beginning of starting out with the cake. That way it will cool down by the time you get ready to incorporate it into your batter, and it won't cook your eggs, okay? All right, now it's time to get your flour, and I actually use 1 cup of all-purpose flour and 1 3/4 cups of cake flour. Now it's time to add the baking soda. I use baking soda and baking powder. Some people just use one of the items. I use both of them. So for measurements, you can go on and look in the description part of this video and it will tell you the exact measurement. Next, you want to add a half a teaspoon of salt. And take a whisk and blend your flours, your baking powder and soda and salt together so that it's well incorporated. All right, I bet some of you don't know what this little item is called, and then some of you do. It's an old-fashioned flour sifter. This is what my mom taught me how to use when I first started learning how to bake cakes. So this is what I'm using to sift the flour. Sifting your flour is also going to help make your cake nice and moist and not too heavy. If you don't sift it, it might be dry and heavy. All right, now that you're done sifting your flour, it's time to separate these eggs. And a German chocolate cake uses a lot of eggs. And this is how my mom taught me to separate the eggs. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I get it right and then sometimes I don't. You see I got a little shell in there, so I'm going to try and get that out. Using a dry paper towel tends to make it easier getting the shell out of the slippery egg, okay? If that happens, I really need to go on and invest in an egg separator so I don't have to go through this. All right, my eggs are separated. I'm putting all the whites together, and then I will set this aside. Let's see if I can get this last egg in here without getting any shell. And like I said earlier, German chocolate cake uses a lot of egg. It's time to add the egg yolks slowly, one at a time. I've seen some people pour all their eggs in at one time, and frankly, I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but I'm not going to deviate from the way I was taught how to make this cake. This is an old-fashioned German chocolate cake. My mom made it. It was her favorite cake. It was my twin brother's favorite cake. My auntie, she made German chocolate cakes, and they all placed the eggs one at a time. So I'm going to follow my family's recipe and enter them at one at a time. Okay? And you don't want to mix it too fast or too long, but you definitely want to make sure you go along the sides of your bowl, scraping the sides and the bottom. Because I've noticed with this mixer, sometimes if you don't scrape down, you'll have unmixed flour at the bottom. So scrape down along the sides, scoop the bottom with your spatula, and make sure you get all of your batter. And do a gentle mix, not too fast. All right, my chocolate has set to the side and cooled off just a little bit. I'm going to make sure it's melted. Let it cool a little bit more. I'm going to go on and whisk these eggs, and it takes about 7 good minutes to whisk your eggs until you get a peak. And I'm kind of concerned because it's a little frothy, but I'm going to bear with it and keep on mixing. As you can see, it's nice and fluffy, and this is how you want it to be. So I'm done with the egg whites. Now I'm going to go on and add my melted chocolate and water into my butter and sugar mixture, so that I don't over mix my cake because I don't want it tough. I'm just going to get a spoon and lightly incorporate the chocolate into this butter and sugar mixture. All right, we're coming to the end part. It's time to add my flour, and you always start with flour and you mix it in parts and you end with flour, okay? Now, so that you don't make a mess, take a spoon or your spatula and gently kind of mix in the flour into your batter, so that once you turn on your beater, flour isn't splattering all over the place. That's a little tip that I use to not make a big mess when you're baking a cake. All right, now it's time to mix it just a little bit. Remember, not too much, just a little. While it's still mixing, go on and add about 1/3 of your buttermilk. You add that in parts as well. And you're adding some more flour. Take your spatula again so that it doesn't splatter everywhere. And you just repeat this process until you're at the end of your flour. Like I said, always end with flour. I'm adding the buttermilk. Mix it just a little bit. And you can do hand mixing. That's what I do that as well too. Because back in the day, that's how my ancestors baked cake. They didn't have the electric mixer. But today I'm using my mixer, okay? All right. As you can see, I've added in the last bit of the flour, worked it in with my spatula. I'm going to mix it slowly with the mixer, and your batter should look just like this, nice and creamy. And it didn't mix all the way, so I'm just going to use my spatula to make sure all of my buttermilk is mixed in. All right, now here comes the egg whites. You want to gently fold in your egg whites. Do not use your electric mixer. Fold it in with the spatula. And like I said earlier, the egg whites, that's the secret ingredient to a nice, moist cake, okay? Here is how my German chocolate cakes are slightly different from the traditional box. I add another 8 pieces of chocolate to my cake batter. Add a little bit of the mixed batter, the creamy chocolate batter, to cool it down a little bit. Take a spoon, mix it in well. And this is optional. 1 box of the Baker's German chocolate will get you a delicious cake, but I always like a little bit extra, so I take half of a bar and add it to it once I'm near the end. And I go in and add it to my batter. And I just work it in real good with the spatula. And this is, like I said, this is a family favorite cake, homemade. I very rarely eat German chocolate cake that's not cooked from scratch. And when I say scratch, that's the flour, the eggs, the milk, the butter, all that good stuff. Because I was brought up on homemade chocolate cake. I'm sorry, I said chocolate, didn't I? Homemade German chocolate cake. So, yeah. All right, this looks good. I have my pans ready. I've sprayed them with some Baker's Joy. You can do the old-fashioned way of oiling your pans and then flouring them, but you really don't have to if you have some Baker's Joy. I add some batter into 2 9-inch pans, and I level them out. And I really don't measure how much batter I put in each pan. I know a professional baker would, but if you've been following me as long as I've had this channel, that's my disclaimer. I'm not a professional baker. I am self-taught, so I just go with the flow. But if you're meticulous about your baking, you can go in and measure how many ladles or cups of batter you want to place in each so that it's well balanced. But as you can see, I didn't do it. All right, I'm wiping down my counter. This cake actually took me a long time to make it because you didn't see the behind the scenes, but I'm constantly cleaning up as I go. That's how my mom raised me. All right, I'm taking the back of the spoon. I've leveled out the cakes, gently tapped it on the counter so that there are no bubbles in it, and the cake is pretty much balanced. Once it's cleaning up this mess on the counter, the chocolate, I placed it in the oven for 35 minutes on 350. And while it's baking, I'm going to get started on my frosting. As you can see, I have chopped up the butter, placed it in a saucepan on medium-high heat so that it can melt quickly. Now you're going to add your evaporated canned milk. Take your whisk, and here's a very important step. Do not stop whisking the entire time. For about 10 to 13 minutes, you are whisking your sauce. Add in your sugar. Keep whisking. Then add in your vanilla flavoring. Whisk that in. All right, you see how it's thickening up? Getting a little bubbly. Keep whisking. Oh, sorry about that. I accidentally bumped the tripod. Now I'm going to add some brown sugar. That's because I like my pecan frosting to have a little brown tint. If I didn't, then it would be more yellowish coloring. I don't like my frosting yellow, so I add the brown sugar and whisk that in. All right, once your frosting is turning the shade of brown that you want, move the pot off of the heat, turn your heat off, and you want to use Baker's shredded coconut, okay? It's very important that you use the same brand that you use for your chocolates. You want to stir in your coconut, and I say use the brand because any other brand might be too hard. All right, now you're going to add in your toasted pecans. And take your spoon and stir them in until they're well combined. All right, once you've made your frosting, put a little bit on your cake plate, and that's going to prevent your cake from sliding all over the place. Let your cake cool for 20 minutes, and then gently flip them out of the cake pan. position it so it's centered. And now it's time to frost it. Now, I know some people try and take a shortcut. They'll go on and buy the German chocolate frosting already made out of the store, but I'm telling you, you're missing out on a delicious frosting by doing that. I mean, the store-bought is fine, but it's not as tasty as homemade. I really wish I had made a little bit more so I could have put more in the middle of this cake. But oh well, that happens sometimes. Remember, I used 2 9-inch round cake pans. Growing up, my mom and my auntie always made triple layer German chocolate cake. You know what I'd love to know? How many of you can tell the difference between a store-bought cake and a homemade cake? Let me know in a comment. And I edited so you didn't have to see me frost the whole thing. But here it is. It looks just scrumptious. Like I said, this was in honor of my mom's birthday a few days ago. And I can't wait to try this with some vanilla ice cream. And homemade German chocolate cake. Don't forget to look in the description part of this video so that you can get the complete recipe, all right? Okay, see how moist it is? I'm looking at the inside. I wish I made a little bit more frosting so you could see more of it in the middle, but oh my God, it looks so good and it's so moist. Yes, it is delicious. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know what's going on with my camera. Maybe I bumped into it. Hit me up in the comments and let me know, what did you think about this video? Peace.